Lynn Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Oh, man, I feel like the guy on the bus who was just out cold. I mean, he was out cold. It looked like a definite Monday morning. Hope you're awake. It's another beautiful day. It's Monday, May 7th. I'm Lynn Cullen, going to be here for an hour or so, opining on this and that. And in fact, feel free to do the same yourself. You can always email me at lynn@pghcitypaper.com or call at 412-316-3381. Always have trouble knowing where to start over after the weekend when so many things have happened, not quite sure where to set down. Staying local for a little while, it always amazes me, the thousands of people willing to run a marathon. Gosh, unbelievable. I couldn't walk it. I seriously could not walk it, but then I got a messed up foot. But it just amazes me. A friend of mine from Portland, Oregon, who originally from here, flew all the way here just to torture herself running the marathon, and it was amazing. I mean, you can sign up. The way they can do it now, she signed me up so that I got a text every once in a while from the marathon telling me where she was. And how they can do that for 20,000 runners. But they do. I mean, in Bango, they send off I got, I think, 4 texts. She's at this point, she's at this time, at this pace, she should finish at blah, blah, blah. And that allowed me to sort of calculate when she'd be running by my neighborhood, so I was able to get out to urge her on. Worked perfectly. Unbelievable. Her first marathon, and she finished in the top half of the pack. Pretty impressive. Unbelievable. Kentucky Derby. I don't look at races at races at all. Don't know anything about it. For some reason, every year I get into these 3 races, especially the Derby. And what an exciting race this year. I mean, it really is. It's just it's amazing. It's amazing. Read a story recently about the fact that jockeys could be replaced by robots. There it is again. You know, just when you think, well, they'd never be able to, certain jobs that would be immune to being technologically wiped out. But in fact, I'm not sure exactly where it is in the Middle East that they have these camel races, and they had young children riding the camels. And even in that neck of the woods, not known for, caring a lot about human rights, I guess there was a hue and cry about the child labor, the danger of having these young children riding these huge animals that are, a camel can move. Doesn't look like it, but man, they can move. So, believe it or not, they have replaced the children with robots. That's already happened. So the camel racing, the camels ride with this thing on them. It's a robot. It's controlled by somebody, and can in fact do whatever it is, I guess, that a child jockey would do. But obviously, I don't know. It'd be a shame, actually. Although also reading a lot about horse racing lately, I mean, what a slimy industry that is. I mean, in terms of care of the animals, the number of horses that are running that shouldn't be running, that are doped up, that end up falling, having to be euthanized. Also, the number of jockeys who are hurt. It's a very, very dangerous sport, and something rather seedy about it behind the grandstands, behind the stables or something. And as they found out, I mean, a body turned up at Churchill Downs just a few hours after the Derby was run. There's a dead man. Speaking of dead men, what an awful story. This woman speaking to her husband, a nurse in the military in Afghanistan. She's talking to him. They have a prearranged every week or something. They speak on Skype. And she's talking to him, and all of a sudden, bang, he just goes down. Face down. And behind him, she can see a bullet hole he was shot dead right in front of her as he's talking to her on Skype. And the military won't say boo yet about it. Can you imagine? She's talking to him, and down he goes. She's freaking out. She's trying to get in touch with somebody. Nobody's coming to his aid. He's in a room somewhere in Afghanistan talking to her. And the screen stays up. And finally, these two guys come into the room, and they don't interact with her at all. They take him out, and she has no idea what the hell happened. I can't imagine anything so horrific. So, I'm just yapping here till a subject grabs me. We say adieu to Nicolas Sarkozy, and it's fine with me. I never liked the little twerp. His replacement, a socialist, the French have not elected a socialist since Francois Mitterrand, and that was some time ago. And this guy looks like such a nice guy, doesn't he? He just looks like a regular fellow. He doesn't look French to me. His name is Hollande. Looks like Holland to us, but I guess they don't say Hollande. And looks like a sweet soul. Whether he is or not, I don't know. I'm sure Angela Merkel ain't too happy about it. So all over Europe, there have been elections, and the moderates are taking it on the chin all over the place, and either the right or the left seem to be gaining ground. My gut reaction is this doesn't bode well, just because when Europeans go nuts and get angry and freaked out, history tells us scary things happen. So I've been watching what's going on in Europe with some trepidation, actually. There are a number of countries where you could argue that the political atmosphere is starting to, in some respects, be reminiscent of the political atmosphere in Europe in the 30s. And as I said, that's grounds for some trepidation. The growth of xenophobic and totally fascistic parties is clear, and you can see it in France. It is one of the things, actually, that helped to knock Sarkozy out, because even though he was the conservative, and you might have expected in a run against a socialist that the right-wingers in France would have, maybe propped him up. They did not. And their leader, the daughter of this despicable bigot, Le Pen, clearly held them back, did not in any way say, get behind Sarkozy. So you got a real growth of the scary right-wingers in France. Believe it or not, I can't even recall all the countries where this is happening. Greece, certainly, as well. And that was shown in elections there. Excuse me, Hungary, I seem to recall, has a huge growth in their right-wingers. The growth of anti-Semitism in almost all European countries becoming palpable, even in a place like Sweden. Just read an article the other day about just horrific, really, again, reminiscent of the 30s, attacks on Jews in this Swedish town in which there are next to none. There's like 81 Jews in the town, and they're living in terror. Sweden. So I'm a little nervous as I look. You also saw the Conservatives take a hit in Great Britain. Europe is roiling, and this doesn't bode well for us, of course, because they just can't get their act together. And I don't see the European Union actually surviving, ultimately, this. And so when the European Union falls apart, again, reason for concern. Here I am being my usual negative self. Went to the Pirate game Saturday night. I picked the right game. That's the one they won. They looked fantastic, which is not the case, I guess, the night before and yesterday, but I lucked out. Saw a good game. I have to tell you, it's the second time last week that I was downtown at night. Once it was during the week on a Tuesday night, and I told you I was sort of blown away by how busy the downtown was. That old sense of Pittsburgh just, being, rolling up the streets at 5 o'clock and no life down here during the week was simply not true. The joint was jumping, and Saturday night, it was unbelievable. And as my friend said, as we were walking back to the car, and we walked through the cultural district, what a riot as the Pittsburgh Pirate crowd spills out, just as the blue-haired ladies are coming out of Heinz Hall, and that was a gratuitous insult, Cullen. Mm-hmm. And I take it back immediately and apologize. But you were like elbowing your way down the sidewalks and then into Market Square. Good Lord. I mean, unbelievably crowded. Now, the fact is you had the marathon kicking off just hours later, so you had a lot of people around for that. But, something happening at the Benedum, it's pretty cool. The city shows signs of life. So, how much money do you think it would take to make you happy? To change the subject. How much would you need to take in a year to really feel like I'm okay and to be happy? I'm looking at Jess because she ain't anywhere near the number yet. What do you think? What would you need to make to feel like that's it, I'm fine?
Like $50,000.
She comes up with $50,000 would do it for you. $50,000 a year, says Jess. I ain't asking for the world, just $50,000. Mm-hmm. Well, interesting, Jess. You absolutely hit on the number.
Really?
That's the answer. According to studies. An annual income of $50,000 is the tipping point when it comes to overall satisfaction. People who earn at least that much self-report being happier in every category. Happier with where they live, happier in their relationships, happier in their health, their jobs, their spiritual life, their every aspect of life. That's the tipping point. People who make at least that much. Anybody under 50, you start seeing it heading down because there's all kinds of stress related to being under that number. I can't recall what the average income is for Americans, but it is not 50. It's not 50, which is why we're not a happy people right now. Interestingly, if 50,000 is the tipping point, then at what point do you just keep getting happier the more money you pile on that? Well, turns out that does not appear to be the case either. It looks like at around 75,000, anything beyond 75 does not seem to correlate with more satisfaction and happiness in life. But from 50 to 75, it does. So I guess the happiest people are making between 50 and 75, the most satisfied. But after 75,000, according to, I mean, obviously this is just, it just doesn't matter anymore. Although I can hear a lot of you saying, yeah, right, well, but 75 sounds to me like, that's what I would say. I'm a little greedier than Jess. I would say 75 is what it'd take for me to feel like I was doing okay and make me feel that I was being somehow, if not fairly compensated, reasonably compensated. I want to wade into a subject that I am so conflicted about, I don't know even what I'm going to say. It came up on Friday's show on WQED 4802 that I am a panelist on, and that is a show that supposedly has, the right and the left, as is our unfortunate habit in media in this country, always formulating everything as somehow divisible into, okay, here's the right wing and here's the left wing. And so there are two conservatives and two liberals on the show, I being one of the latter. And the subject of Pittsburgh public schools and the certain furlough, talk about satisfaction, people making good livings teaching, hundreds, 400 of those good jobs are going to disappear. And the question, and the one that is making me nuts, is how does one determine, if you were the king of the world, how do you determine how to choose which? What is the fairest way to choose those 400? Now, of course, the union says there's only one way, and we've got it down here in writing, and so this is the way it's going to happen. Seniority. That's the way it happens. And that's what unions fought long and hard for, this kind of protection. So, last hired, first fired. Sorry, but that's the way it's going to be. So the 400 are going to have to come from, the bottom in that regard, in terms of seniority. Now, in a world that, I don't know, where subjectivity wasn't, so subjective, you would want to be able, I would think, to say, that's sort of a stupid way to decide who's going to go. Let's keep the best teachers. And we'll show the worst teachers, although there's bound to be some good teachers in that 400, but let's do it that way. And so we'll pluck out the ones who are past their prime, phoning it in, or the ones that never should have gotten in, or the ones that just ain't capable, don't have the whatever the skill is, get them out. That's the way. It makes sense to do it. And that, of course, is what the administration says they want to do. But how do you determine, seriously, and who determines what a good teacher is? They say they have performance reviews and so they can know. But, again, it's all subjective in many cases. So I want to talk about that because I'm really wrestling with it. The reality is I don't think either side has it right. I don't think seniority is a good way to do it, frankly. Even though I'm a good union person, it just doesn't make sense. We're talking about our children. We're talking about teaching. And it's absurd to think that just because you've been there longer, that a teacher who's been there 9 years is, of course, better than a teacher who's been there 3. That doesn't make any sense to me at all, nor would I suspect doesn't make any sense to anybody. But I do want to hear from you. There have been a lot of very passionate letters to the editor from teachers and union members arguing that seniority is the only way to do it. And admittedly, that is the way that contractually is going to be the case. I mean, I don't think the administration has the ability to start hand-picking. I think they do because of collective bargaining agreements have to go with seniority. They are begging the teachers' union to ease up on the seniority ruling a little bit so that, again, the best can be retained. The administration concerned that some of those best teachers are some of the newer hires. So, this is one of those, you need the wisdom of a Solomon. How do you get these two sides together? If, as both sides say, they care most about the children. And I suppose they do in a way, kind of. If they care most about the children, then what would they do? And how does the union give a little without letting go of the security they fought so hard to gain, but basing it just on longevity? Drives me nuts. That doesn't have anything to do with quality. Anyone who's been in the workforce knows that's true. It has nothing to do with it. So help me with this if you have any bright ideas, because it's really, really important. The public schools are in a state of near crisis. We have this city that is sort of coming alive again, as I alluded to. It's showing all kinds of potential again. But if at the same time its public school system is going down, that's a drag. That's a drag on attracting people. That's just that it's such a terrible thing to let happen. Try telling that to Tom Corbett. All right, take a break, and then I'm going to come back and I'll wrestle with this myself if you want to listen to me have a fight with myself. Or, as I said, I would welcome your input as well. In a minute.
Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com or call Lynn at 412-316-3381. Lynn Cullen Live will return in a moment.
Go to bergbargains.com for great deals on tickets to the Opera, City Theater, Symphony, History Museum, and Carnegie Museums. Bergbargains.com, Pittsburgh's only online deal site where the deals don't expire. Check out this week's big deal. Over 40% off authentic laser lipo treatments from FDA-approved Zerona. Bergbargains.com.
Saving energy saves you money. Whether you switch to Energy Star light bulbs, install Energy Star appliances, or add extra insulation. Learn more at EnergySavers.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Energy and the Ad Council.
Get Lynn Cullen Live on your smartphone. Go to citypapermobile.com now for Pittsburgh City Paper's brand new mobile app. Get the latest restaurant reviews, event listings, movie times, and of course, Lynn Cullen Live on your smartphone. citypapermobile.com.
Have a question or an opinion? Call Lynn Cullen at 412-316-3381 or email Lynn at pghcitypaper.com. Now, more with Lynn Cullen Live.
I should say that on Friday night's show, 4802, when the subject came up, there was a rare meeting of minds with the two on the right and the two on the left actually essentially agreeing that just doing it by seniority is not the right way. I mean, you can bet the right said that, but I agreed, and so did the other so-called lefty, Valerie McDonald Roberts. And she was in her earlier life actually on the school board. You also had the board almost unanimously, with the exception of Mr. Brentley, who's always the exception, asking the union to please show some flexibility here. Of course, the union has said, no way, no way. Anyone who's ever been a parent, I was the parent of a child in the Pittsburgh public schools, and he did not finish in the Pittsburgh public schools. By the time he got to high school, it just wasn't working for him. And so I did unhappily pull him out because I did want him to have a public school education. I see such value in that. But as I'm thinking of the teachers he had, let's say in elementary school, there were some wonderful teachers. But as is always the case, you can count them on one hand. One hand. In your own memory. How many teachers would you call extraordinary that had an impact on you in a very real way? You can count them on one hand. Then there's a whole bunch that, that did their job. They were good. They were okay, if not life-altering. And then, and we all had them, there were teachers who were flat out lousy. They were bad teachers. They were ill-suited to the profession in which they found themselves. They were clearly bored. They were unhappy. They were miserable. They showed it. They were incapable of inspiring the children. And, in fact, at worst, and I saw some of these in the public schools that my son had, at the worst, these bad teachers not only don't have the capacity to inspire, but they have the capacity to do the opposite, to actually squelch a child's interest in a subject, to squelch a child's creativity, to seriously damage. I had a few of those, didn't you? I mean, I'm seeing these teachers in my head. And I have to tell you, as far as I know, most of them are still there. And man, they got seniority. They got seniority. So that's what makes me, the union-made lefty, get queasy about seniority ruling in a case this important. 400 teachers, 400 are going to lose their jobs. And we're going to decide by just lopping off the 400 at the bottom of the seniority list? Give me a break. There's some glorious teachers in that group. And then look at who's left. And there's some flat-out awful teachers that are left. Does this make any sense? If the schools are downsizing so much, then at least let's be left with a concentration of good and even great teachers. This can actually be an opportunity. Because I'm telling you, there probably are 400 teachers in the Pittsburgh public school system who are lousy. I'm willing to bet. And nothing against teachers. The same percentages would be the case in any line of work. Anyone who's been out in the workforce knows that. There's always a few that are exemplary at whatever the job is. The right attitude, the right skills, everything. You know, they're golden employees. Then there's this same-sized group of total washouts. And in fact, destructive people to the morale of the group, to the everything, the mission, everything. And then there's most of us in the big middle, the muddled middle. We're okay, depends on where we got out, what side of the bed we got out of, if we're going to be a good employee that day or not, but we have a reasonable work ethic, we do our job, on occasion we are inspiring, on occasion we're not. Most people are just that, the bell curve of life. So to think that all you're going to do is use tenure, is use length, that is not in any way a qualitative measure. It is not in any way. And I was reading letters, I couldn't read them, they made me too angry, from, Pittsburgh teachers in the paper the other day saying that this is the only fair way. What's fair about that? It's stupid. We're talking about something that is so important. A hell of a lot more important than seniority. We're talking about our children's education. On the other hand, so who decides? Well, the administration's going to decide. Now, here are my qualms, and they're serious qualms. This is an administration that is being forced to make these cuts because of what? Budgetary issues. They don't have the money anymore. Also, they have a shrinking student population. If you were looking at the fact that you have this much money, wouldn't it be tempting to, in fact, go exactly to the most senior? Wouldn't it be? You betcha. Go to the most senior teachers and get them out because they're making the most money by virtue of seniority. So you can knock out a teacher up there who's been there forever and making a ton of money, and for the same amount of money, you can have two at a lower pay grade. If you're the manager, that is a very tempting way of choosing. And it's exactly why unions cling so steadfastly to protecting seniority. It's a judgment call. And who's to say anybody is capable of that judgment without that bias of wanting to get rid of the most highly paid or the most troublesome, Here's an opportunity to go after the ones that, constantly questioning the principal's authority, or, which might be one of those inspirational teachers, one of the ones that's outside the box, who excites their students but drives the administration nuts. Those teachers would be vulnerable. I don't trust the administration to make the right call. I don't trust seniority to be a reasonable thing. So you can see my quandary here. Now, the administration will make the call. I don't know how. I guess it always comes down to this. Somebody has to make the call. And I do hope the union, the teachers know who the bad teachers are. The teachers know who their colleagues are who don't give a you-know-what. They know who they are. The ones that are just constantly negative, that are never excited about anything that they're doing, who look on their job as drudgery. Those are the people you want out. And often those are the older teachers. They're worn out. But the young ones that are excited, that have new ideas, they're going to be thrown out the door. And some of those old, I'm thinking of a science teacher, some of those old jerks who do the same thing. They could be literally asleep and teach their classes. They do the same thing year after year in the same mind-numbing way, killing off the curiosity of those young children in their classes. Those are the ones I want to get. It's an opportunity, but we can't do it because of the union. On the other hand, we're going to let the administrators do it? Ay. Because they often don't like the good teachers either. As I said, good teachers are trouble. They're the ones who push all the time, who don't like being constrained by these stupid curricula. Here's Dana. First, it irks me to death to know that the state is cutting education while it has a $160 million rainy day fund. There should not be a rainy day fund. Isn't the idea of taxation that you only tax enough to cover expenses? That being said, I saw a program about the wonderful new buildings and technology being provided to the new cyber schools when public schools are doing without. Public schools would love to be able to have those same facilities and tools. As far as how the cuts should go, unions have a contract for a reason, and the way layoffs are to occur is spelled out in that contractual agreement. Quite frankly, there is no difference between good teachers, good nurses, good electrical workers, good car workers, etc. The contracts go by seniority. For this exact reason, it's too difficult and subjective to decide any other way. The schools would keep all of the lowest paid teachers regardless of ability if they had their way. I'm afraid I believe the union contract should be enforced. Good young teachers will be able to find other good jobs. A good older teacher in their 50s will not likely find another good job. That's true. That is the state of our existence. Sorry, Lynn. I believe the union contract instructions should prevail. This is another union busting tactic. Okay? It's Dana. I'm uncomfortably saying what I say, as I said. But I'm saying it as a mother of a child. I'm saying it as someone who saw it. But you're right. To trust the administration to make the right call. Because the same holds true for the administration. There's a few brilliant administrators in the Pittsburgh Public Schools. And there are some that are idiots. And then there's a whole range in the middle, blah, 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 blah. Right? Are there idiots that are going to be making choices, decisions? Probably. Don't think for a minute that seniority doesn't work in these creaky old management systems. Who gets ahead? Not always the person with the great ideas. Ass kissers get ahead. That's what I've seen in my working life. That does work. Or people who know how to do the politics of the workplace, not necessarily the work. People who know how to take credit for things that they maybe didn't really have all that much to do with. Those people get ahead. So I guess what I'm railing about then is just reality. Maybe. It just breaks my heart, though. Because in my fantasy world, this is a golden opportunity to rid the schools of the people who aren't doing the job. And that's not what's going to happen. Nowhere near it. We'll take another break.
More is on the way with Lynn Cullen Live.
Pittsburgh City Paper's annual restaurant guide magazine is available now. Plus, Christina Perri, Marilyn Manson, and Pop at the City Theater. Pittsburgh City Paper available at over 1,700 locations throughout Western Pennsylvania and on the web at pghcitypaper.com.
Gustavo and Vela wants to thank all of Southwestern Pennsylvania, the USA, and the world for helping to liberate his native country of Equatorial Guinea. Equatorial Guinea has suffered 43 years of dictatorship, 43 years of human rights abuses, 43 years of corruption, and 43 years of kleptocracy. Even with $5 billion in oil revenue in 2011, the 700,000 citizens of Equatorial Guinea earn less than $2 per day. A proud Mount Lebanon resident, please help Gustavo and Vela usher in the 21st century by allowing freedom, democracy, and socioeconomic prosperity by the rule of law for the next 43 years and beyond. Email him at presidentandvela@yahoo.com to help free Equatorial Guinea.
Hey Jenny, why do you have May 13th through the 19th highlighted on your calendar?
It's National Women's Health Week. Time to make our health a top priority.
So what's going on May 17th from 10 to 1? You have it circled.
That's the open house for Sanford Brown Institute in Pittsburgh. They're celebrating Women's Health Week too.
Are you gonna go?
Totally. I'm getting ready to go back to school and I want to see which healthcare program is right for me. I'm thinking about training to be a medical assistant or diagnostic medical sonographer. That's ultrasounds. But they have a lot more programs than that.
Okay, so Thursday, May 17th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Sanford Brown in Pittsburgh?
Yep, I'll be there, and you should too.
Call Sanford Brown at 877-839-7444. That's 877-839-7444. Sanford Brown cannot guarantee employment or salary. Find disclosures on graduation rates, student financial obligations, and more at www.sanfordbrown.edu/disclosures.
You're listening to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Once again, here's Lynn Cullen.
So that was Jess was one of the Jess was one of the girls on that Sanford Brown spot. What was one of your lines?
Totally.
Totally. And I did that. I'm going to, and you should too. I see a budding career as
They love my enthusiasm.
a voice. They like your enthusiasm. Well, right. You had to, yes. You don't have to pretend to be enthusiastic. You are, in general, an enthusiastic person. Okay, I'll try to leave that subject. I know it's just going to keep... I saw, this happened on Twitter. Let me see if I can find it. The most amazing letter from a right-winger. And let me find it for you. I would like to share it with you because one of the things about it that interested me in it is it's very well written. So this is not some knuckle dragger. This is somebody who's bright and has the most astonishingly retro view of how society should configure itself. And to think that there are people who really, they really believe this. And clearly, I'm going to read this to you even though it's going to make you crazy, okay? Because I found it fascinating. This was a letter to the editor in the newspaper in someplace in Montana. There are newspapers in Montana? This is written by one Michael A. Ross. Oh, shoot. And, of course, it just disappeared on me. Ah, damn, there it is. Okay. Here's his letter. Listen to this, guys. This is the worldview that a lot of people hold. And believe me, they vote Republican. Men have ruled every civilization since the beginning of time and always will. That is not the question. The question is, will a civilization be ruled by good men or evil men? Historically, evil men have ruled. Evil men rule today. When good men rule, And when was that, by the way? I wish this is one thing this guy never says. Okay. When good men rule, it's ordinary men exercising leadership. This is his idea of, heaven on earth. When good men rule, it's ordinary men exercising leadership in their homes, local churches, local civic government, local business and commerce. When evil men rule, it is a handful of political, corporate, and monetary elitists that control nearly all the wealth in the economy. They rule from corporate boardrooms, Washington, and Wall Street. It is their strategy to attack ordinary men as the heads of their families and other traditional institutions. So this is his worldview, that the evil elitist men that govern, their strategy is to attack the good ordinary men. This is fascinating to me. They do this, the evil men, by pushing women out of their homes and into the workforce, by creating an economy that requires both parents to work. Also, by pushing them into jobs traditionally reserved for men. Soldier, police officer, firefighter, physician, truck driver, etc. And by pushing schoolgirls into highly competitive varsity athletics traditionally reserved for boys, just to name a few. God created us male and female. They are saying there is no male and female. It is all just to blur the distinction between men and women. Having destroyed the role of ordinary men as leaders, they rush in to fill the void. Any wife who is contentious with her husband's leadership, any woman who takes a man's pulpit or seeks employment that has been traditionally reserved for men, has played into the elitists' hands. Traditional male leadership is no guarantee of a decent and just society, but it is a prerequisite. A truly free and just society will be one that promotes women as homemakers and mothers, nurses, teachers, secretaries, and cheerleaders. Cheerleaders! Okay, now this is a guy who, and I remember when I went to college, I remember thinking, what am I here for? Because the only jobs I can have are exactly that. I can be a wife and a mother. I could be a nurse, and I don't want to be a nurse and couldn't be. I can be a teacher. I can be a secretary. He hit them. Never considered cheerleader because you can't make a living being a cheerleader. This is a guy who still fervently believes this. And you think he's alone? Millions of these people. Blew my mind. And that you can tell this is a fervently held belief. I don't know. What's amazing is the hopefulness of somebody who believes what he believes, because he actually thinks that he has a shot if enough people come around to his point of view, that he has a shot to roll things back. And that is so extraordinary to me. Although it could be done. It could be done through a horrific kind of revolution. That's the only way. It could be done. Sort of some fascistic overtaking of our government, where women would be ordered out of a job like I have, out all the women doctors. Women would be ordered back into the teaching profession, and taking a total back seat to men. You think it could ever happen? I don't count anything out. One of the things he said that women were taking over men's roles was, I think firefighter was one, he said. And I remember when there was an effort to get women in the firefighter, being a fire. Just the fact that he said firefighter is interesting, because that's the gender-neutral term that we came to use. It was always fireman, right? I want to be a fireman when I grow up. Well, fireman disappeared from the lexicon because of the things that this guy is decrying, and yet he used the word firefighter, which is great. So I remember when the first efforts to bring women into Pittsburgh's fire department happened, and I was, as usual, in front of a microphone yapping. And there were arguments that I thought were, they were a little hard to parry. Namely, okay, you're in a house, it's burning, you need a firefighter who's going to come in and be able to sling you over his strong shoulders and carry you out the door and save your life. You can't have a 5-foot, 100-pound girl doing that. People are going to die. That was that was an argument, and I thought, geez, in some cases that might be true. But listen to this story I came across this weekend. I love this story. A toddler who fell into a storm drain in East Point, Georgia, was rescued by the smallest firefighter on the force. 1-year-old Darnell Brown became trapped in a narrow 20-foot deep storm drain. Rosa Toulis, firefighter, who stands only 4 feet 11 inches tall. Now, I'll tell you, I don't think she could make the fight. They wouldn't let her in here because I think there is a height requirement. She wouldn't have made it here. 4'11". She was the only one small enough to squeeze into the tiny opening. And it took her about 20 minutes to get down to this kid. She's in this tiny little hole going down to get the kid. She reached him and managed to get back with him. Okay, now there's a case where being small was the only way to rescue the person whose life was in danger. So it made me think that we so often get into these, well, a firefighter has to be strong. No, it makes sense to have like a mix of people, right? A mix of people, because there would be occasions where it's good to have a woman cop. There's situations where, in fact, that's a better thing than a male cop. Situations where it's good to have a tiny little firefighter. And there are situations where it's good and best to have a big, huge, tough, strong firefighter. You need brawn. You need brains. You need everything. You need the best people. And that kind of meritocracy where everybody is potentially in the mix and gender has nothing to do with it is a world that the guy who wrote the letter in Montana, sees as the doing of evil elitists who want to push down good, regular men. Fascinating to me. The New York Times had an interesting idea for this Caro book, the latest Caro book on Lyndon Johnson and his use of presidential power. They chose to review the book none other than Bill Clinton. And it's a very interesting read. I noticed it was posted on Jared Day's Daily News Nuggets. Check it out, Daylee News Nuggets. His blog, he's got it. I read it last night and was fascinated by how Clinton looking at Johnson and his brilliant use of power. And he zeroed in on this quote that Johnson reportedly made about using his power. And he said, hey, what the hell's the presidency for? If you have it, use it. And I do recommend this just to see what Clinton sees. I found these two things he said very interesting. I'll share them with you. This is Bill Clinton writing. Power ultimately reveals character. For LBJ, becoming president freed him to embrace parts of his past that for political or other reasons had remained under wraps. Suddenly there was no longer a reason to disassociate himself from the poverty and failures of his childhood. Power released the source of Johnson's humanity. And then Clinton goes on to catalog. Once Johnson felt, I'm powerful enough to be able to show my empathy for the poor because I was poor. And after all the years, Clinton writes, of striving for power, once he had it, he said to the American people, and this is a Johnson quote, I'll let you in on a secret. I mean to use my power. And Clinton says, and use it he did, to pass the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, the Open Housing Law, the anti-poverty legislation, Medicare, Medicaid, Head Start, and much more. This is why I look at Johnson as such a tragic hero. Done in by Vietnam, but if not for Vietnam, what a glorious legacy he left. In a presidency shorter than Bill Clinton had, what he accomplished is simply mind-blowing. So check that out if you have a chance, okay? All righty, I'm done. I'm finished. I'm out. I'm going on with the rest of my life, and I hope you do too, and enjoy this lovely day. Tomorrow. Talk at you.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.